The city of Viridian hummed beneath the surface of the earth, its Gothic spires stretching toward a cavern ceiling that had been engineered to mimic the night sky. Artificial constellations twinkled above the underground metropolis, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of those who walked its streets. In the year 2154, humanity had retreated beneath the Earth's crust, and Viridian stood as a testament to both technological advancement and archaic tradition. Isabella Arden stood at the edge of the grand ballroom in the Blood Brotherhood's underground palace. Her crimson gown, a stark contrast against the obsidian walls. As the eldest of the Arden clan, one of the 7 noble families that ruled Viridian, she carried herself with the poise expected of her station. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate arrangement, revealing a slender neck adorned with a single ruby pendant, the mark of her family's status within the Brotherhood. "Another tiresome negotiation, Isabella?" A familiar voice drew her attention. Elias Morrow, her closest confidant and a council member of the underground parliament, approached with 2 glasses of blood wine, a synthetic beverage that had become popular among the elite. "The Brotherhood grows more demanding with each passing day," Isabella replied, accepting the glass. "They insist on higher tributes while offering less protection. My father would never have allowed such imbalance." "Your father didn't live to see the rise of the light less dark," Elias whispered, his eyes darting around to ensure they weren't overheard. "Their influence grows, even here in our most sacred halls. The light, less dark, a radical faction that had emerged from the surface world, determined to dismantle the underground society's strict hierarchy. Rumors of their infiltration had been circulating for months, but Isabella had dismissed them as paranoia. "Let them try," she said, with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "The Arden bloodline has protected Viridian for 3 generations. We won't fail now." As she spoke, Isabella felt a peculiar sensation, a prickling at the back of her neck. Years of political training had honed her instincts. Someone was watching her. She scanned the room casually, pretending to sip her blood wine. The gathering was exclusive. Only the highest-ranking members of Viridian society had been invited to celebrate the anniversary of the Brotherhood's founding. Security was supposedly impenetrable. A flash of movement in the gallery above caught her eye. A figure dressed in the dark uniform of the palace guards. But something about their posture seemed wrong. Isabella was about to mention it to Elias when a strong hand gripped her arm, pulling her sharply to the side. The movement was so sudden that she nearly lost her balance, the blood wine splashing onto the marble floor. "What?" she began, indignant. But the rest of her protest was drowned out by the deafening crack of a gunshot. Where she had been standing just moments before, a bullet embedded itself into the wall. The room erupted into chaos, screams echoing off the high ceiling as guests scrambled for cover. Isabella found herself pressed against a broad chest, strong arms forming a protective cage around her. She looked up into the face of her savior, a man she had never seen before. His features were sharp, almost severe, with eyes the color of steel and a jagged scar running along his jawline. "Stay down," he commanded, his voice low and rough. Before she could respond, he shoved her behind a marble column and spun toward the gallery. In one fluid motion, he drew a weapon from beneath his jacket. Not a standard-issue pulse gun, but an ancient revolver that seemed out of place in this age of advanced technology. The assassin above fired again, but the stranger was already moving, dodging the shot with inhuman speed. He returned fire, his bullet finding its mark with deadly precision. The assassin fell from the gallery, landing with a sickening thud on the ballroom floor. Guards surrounded the body immediately, while others rushed to secure the perimeter. Isabella remained frozen behind the column, her heart pounding against her ribs. The stranger approached the fallen assassin, kneeling beside the body. Isabella watched as he removed the mask covering the assassin's face. Whatever he saw there caused him to stiffen. "This isn't light less dark," he muttered, almost to himself. A thin stream of blood trickled from the assassin's wound, flowing across the marble floor until it reached the hem of Isabella's gown. As the crimson liquid soaked into the fabric, an electric sensation shot through her body. A burning pain, followed by an overwhelming awareness of the stranger who had saved her life. He felt it too. His head snapped up, eyes locking with hers in shared shock. Blood pact, someone in the crowd gasped. The ancient ritual that none had witnessed in decades. A bond formed when one life was saved by another's blood sacrifice. The stranger had killed for her. And now their fates were inextricably linked by laws older than Viridian itself. "Secure him!" The command came from Maris, captain of the Forbidden Guard, as she pushed through the crowd with her team of elite soldiers. "Wait," Isabella said, stepping forward despite the chaos still swirling around them. "He saved my life." "That remains to be seen." "Lady Arden," Maris replied coldly. "This man is not on the guest list, nor is he a registered citizen of Viridian. For all we know, he could be working with the assassin." The stranger made no move to resist as guards surrounded him, though Isabella noticed how his eyes continued to assess every exit, every potential weapon within reach. He was dangerous. That much was clear. "What's your name?" she asked him directly. A moment's hesitation, then, "Logan Kane." "Well, Logan Kane," Isabella said, drawing herself up to her full height and summoning every ounce of her family's authority. "It seems I am in your debt." "More than you know," he replied, his gaze dropping to the blood that now connected them. His bullet. The assassin's blood. Her gown. "The blood pact has been initiated. By the old laws, your life is now tied to mine." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The blood pact was more than a myth. It was a binding contract under Viridian law, one that even the Arden family couldn't ignore. "Take him to the questioning chambers," Isabella instructed Maris. "But treat him as an honored guest. I will speak with him alone." As Logan was led away, Isabella caught Elias staring at her with undisguised concern. "A blood pact, Isabella? This complicates everything." "Someone tried to kill me in the heart of the Brotherhood's palace," she replied, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I'd say things were already complicated." What neither of them noticed was the slight smile that crossed Logan Kane's face as he was escorted from the ballroom. A smile that suggested he had found exactly what he had come for. The questioning chamber was not what Logan had expected. Instead of the cold, sterile room, typical of interrogation facilities, he found himself in what appeared to be a private study. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with ancient tomes, physical books, a rarity in this digital age. A fire crackled in a marble hearth, casting dancing shadows across the plush carpet. He had been left alone, though he had no doubt he was being observed. The advanced technology of Viridian allowed for surveillance that was virtually undetectable. Still, he made no attempt to escape or to search the room. Instead, he stood by the fire, warming hands that had grown cold despite the rush of adrenaline. The door opened, and Isabella Arden entered. She had changed from her blood-stained gown into a high-collared suit of midnight blue, the traditional color of the Arden family. Without the distraction of chaos and immediate danger, Logan took a moment to truly look at her. The proud tilt of her chin, the intelligence in her dark eyes, the way she carried power as if it were a burden rather than a privilege. "Lady Arden," he acknowledged with a slight bow. "Mr. Kane," she returned, closing the door behind her. "Or is it something else? Assassin, mercenary, spy?" Logan's mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. "I've been called worse." "I'm sure you have." Isabella moved to a cabinet, withdrew 2 crystal glasses, and poured a golden liquid into each. "But right now, you're the man who saved my life and inadvertently bound us together through one of our oldest traditions." She offered him a glass, which he accepted but did not drink from. The blood pact, he said. Not something I had planned on. Few ever do. Isabella took a seat in one of two leather armchairs by the fire, gesturing for him to take the other. It's meant to be spontaneous, a true life debt marked by blood. Logan remained standing. And what exactly does this pact entail, Lady Arden? Please, call me Isabella. I believe we're past formalities when our lives are magically tethered. She took a sip of her drink. The blood pact is a binding contract. The saved owes a life debt to the savior. Traditionally, this meant service until the debt was repaid in kind, or until death separated the bond. Service, Logan raised an eyebrow. Not slavery, Isabella clarified quickly. More like an unbreakable alliance. I am bound to assist you, to protect your interests as you protected my life. The bond works both ways. You are equally bound to me. Logan finally sat, though he perched on the edge of the chair as if ready to spring up at any moment. And if either of us breaks this bond? Legend says the breaker will suffer a fate worse than death, their soul torn from their body, trapped in eternal agony. Isabella's expression remained serious. But those are just stories. The practical reality is that breaking a blood pact is considered the highest treason in Viridian. The punishment is exile, banishment to the surface world. A death sentence. In other words, the surface had become uninhabitable for extended periods. The air too toxic, the radiation levels too high. Survival there required specialized equipment and shelters that few could access. How convenient that I saved the life of Viridian's most influential noblewoman, Logan said dryly. Isabella's eyes narrowed. Was it convenience? Mr. Kane, you appeared at precisely the right moment, with a weapon that should have been detected by our security systems. You knew exactly where the assassin would be positioned. If you're suggesting I orchestrated the attack, I'm suggesting you knew it was coming. Isabella leaned forward. The question is, how? Logan held her gaze for a long moment before answering. I've been tracking this particular assassin for months. They've made attempts on other nobles across different underground cities. When I learned they were targeting Viridian, I managed to infiltrate your security. Why not alert our authorities? Would they have believed an outsider? Logan countered. Besides, I had personal reasons for wanting to deal with this assassin myself. And those reasons would be? Logan's expression hardened. That's not relevant to our current situation. Isabella studied him, weighing his words against his demeanor. He was hiding something. That much was obvious. But she sensed no immediate threat from him. The blood pact would have failed to form if his intentions toward her had been malicious. Very well, she said at last. We'll set that aside for now. What matters is that we're bound, and there's still an assassin's employer unaccounted for. You believe they'll try again? Don't you? Isabella stood, moving to a desk where a holographic display activated at her touch. The Brotherhood's palace has the most advanced security in Viridian. If someone managed to infiltrate it once, they'll find another way, Logan finished for her. Which means you need protection. I have the Forbidden Guard for that. The same guard that failed to prevent an assassination attempt right under their noses. Logan joined her at the desk. No offense to your security forces, but they're looking for threats from the outside. This was an inside job. Isabella's fingers paused over the display. What makes you say that? The assassin wore a genuine guard uniform, not a replica. They knew the patrol schedules, the blind spots in your surveillance. Someone with access to internal information helped them. She wanted to deny it, to defend the integrity of the system her family had helped build. But logic prevailed. If you're right, I can't trust anyone. Except me, Logan said with unexpected gentleness. The blood pact ensures that much, at least. Their eyes met over the glowing display, and Isabella felt something shift between them. Not trust, exactly, but a recognition of their shared predicament. Then it seems I require your services, Mr. Kane, she said formally. As my bound protector. Logan inclined his head. And what will the Brotherhood think of this arrangement? An outsider suddenly becoming the personal guard of an Arden? They'll respect the blood pact, Isabella replied, though uncertainty flickered across her features. It's one of our oldest laws. Laws can be interpreted in many ways, Logan reminded her, especially by those who see an opportunity to advance their own agendas. Isabella's jaw tightened. Let them try. I am still the head of the Arden family. My voice carries weight in the council. And your brother? Where does Arlo Arden stand in all this? The question caught her off guard. How do you know about my brother? Logan's expression revealed nothing. I make it my business to know the power players in any city I enter. Arlo Arden is known to have progressive views about Viridian's future. My brother and I have our differences, Isabella admitted carefully. But he remains loyal to the family. He's currently overseeing our interests in the lower districts. Logan seemed about to say more when a sharp knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal Elias Morrow, his usually composed features tight with concern. Isabella, the council has called an emergency session. They're demanding your presence and an explanation for tonight's events. His gaze shifted to Logan, disapproval evident. They're also requesting that your savior remain in custody until a full investigation can be conducted. Isabella straightened, her political mask falling into place. Tell the council I will join them shortly. As for Mr. Kane, he remains under my protection as dictated by the Blood Pact. Any objections can be addressed in the session. Elias hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. As you wish. But Isabella, tread carefully. The Brotherhood is looking for someone to blame, and an outsider makes the perfect scapegoat. After he departed, Logan turned to Isabella with a grim smile. It seems our alliance will be tested sooner rather than later. Welcome to Viridian politics, Mr. Kane, Isabella replied, gathering her composure. Where the real danger lies, not in the shadows, but in the light of the council chamber. The Grand Council chamber of the Blood Brotherhood resembled a Roman amphitheater, with tiered seating arranged in a perfect circle around a central speaking platform. Representatives from the 7 noble families occupied the highest tier, while lesser houses and guild masters filled the rows below. The chamber's ceiling was a masterpiece of engineering, a dome of synthetic crystal that reflected the faces of those seated beneath it, creating the illusion that the council was observed by countless identical witnesses. Isabella stood at the center of it all, her posture rigid as she faced the scrutiny of Viridian's most powerful figures. Logan remained a step behind her, his presence causing a continuous murmur among the assembled dignitaries. Lady Arden, intoned Councillor Vex, the ancient representative of the Hemlock family. You claim this outsider saved your life, triggering a blood pact that has not been invoked in 53 years. Convenient, is it not, that you now find yourself bound to a man who bypassed our security without detection? Isabella met the old man's rheumy gaze without flinching. I find nothing convenient about an assassination attempt, Counselor. Had Mr. Kane not intervened, we would be discussing my funeral arrangements rather than ancient traditions. The timing raises questions. Pressed Counselor Devereaux of the Merchant Guild. The Brotherhood is on the verge of renegotiating tribute rates with the surface traders. The Arden family has been vocal in opposing increased payments. Are you suggesting I orchestrated an attempt on my own life to influence trade negotiations? Isabella's voice carried a dangerous edge. That would be an extraordinary accusation, Counselor. What the Council seeks is clarity, said a new voice, smooth, cultivated, with an undercurrent of cold ambition. Arlo Arden ascended the steps to the speaking platform, his silver-gray suit immaculate, his resemblance to Isabella evident in the proud set of his jaw and the intensity of his gaze. Unlike his sister, however, Arlo's eyes held a calculating quality that made even seasoned politicians uncomfortable. "Brother," Isabella acknowledged, surprise barely concealed. "I was told you were in the lower districts. I returned as soon as I heard of the attempt on your life." Arlo placed a hand on her shoulder in a show of sibling concern. The Arden family stands united, especially in times of crisis. Logan observed the interaction with narrowed eyes, noting the slight tension in Isabella's frame at her brother's touch. "The council appreciates your presence, Lord Arlo," said Councillor Vex. "Perhaps you can bring a voice of reason to this unusual situation." Arlo turned to address the assembly, his charisma immediately evident as the murmurs subsided. "My esteemed colleagues, while the circumstances are indeed unusual, we cannot ignore our sacred traditions. The Blood Pact is binding under our most ancient laws. My sister's life was saved, and a bond has formed that cannot be dismissed for political convenience." A ripple of surprise passed through the chamber. Arlo was defending the pact? However, he continued smoothly, "We must also consider the security implications. Mr. Kane, while evidently skilled, remains an unknown quantity. I propose a compromise. He remains bound to my sister as tradition demands, but under the supervision of the Forbidden Guard. This ensures both the sanctity of the Blood Pact and the safety of our society." Isabella felt a flash of irritation at her brother's presumption. "The terms of the Blood Pact are clear. Arlo, Mr. Kane and I are bound to each other, not to the Forbidden Guard or any other authority." "A reasonable point," Arlo conceded, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Then perhaps you would agree to limit his access to sensitive areas and information. Surely the pact doesn't require that an outsider be privy to the innermost workings of our government." Before Isabella could respond, Logan stepped forward. "If I may address the council?" A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Outsiders did not speak in council sessions unless explicitly invited. Councillor Vex sputtered in outrage, but Isabella raised a hand. "As my bound protector, Mr. Kane has the right to speak on matters concerning our pact." She nodded to Logan, who surveyed the assembly with calm confidence. "Honorable councillors," he began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "I understand your concerns. An outsider suddenly bound to one of your most prominent citizens presents an unknown variable in your carefully balanced equation of power." He paused, allowing the truth of his words to resonate. "I have no interest in Viridian politics beyond ensuring Lady Arden's safety, which, given recent events, should be a priority for everyone in this chamber. The assassin I neutralized was not working alone. They had inside help, which means the threat remains active." Uneasy glances were exchanged among the councillors. "If you wish to place restrictions on my movements or access, that is your prerogative," Logan continued. "But consider this. By the terms of the Blood Pact, any harm that comes to Lady Arden due to such restrictions would constitute interference with the bond, a serious offense under your own laws." A legal checkmate. Even Arlo looked momentarily impressed. "The outsider knows our laws well," remarked Councillor Devereaux. "Perhaps too well for someone who claims to be a casual visitor. I make it a point to understand the rules of any society I enter," Logan replied evenly. "Especially one as complex as Viridian." Maris, who had been observing from the sidelines, stepped forward. "If I may, councillors, the Forbidden Guard has completed its initial investigation of the assassin's body. The findings are concerning." At a nod from the senior councillor, Maris activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. The assassin's face appeared, along with detailed biological scans. The individual has been identified as Sarah Vane, a known operative for the Light Less Dark. However, further examination revealed unusual neural modifications, technology that doesn't match known Light Less Dark resources. Isabella exchanged a glance with Logan. This aligned with his earlier comment that the assassin wasn't typical Light Less Dark. More troubling, Maris continued, is that Vane's access credentials were genuine. Someone with high-level clearance provided them, which suggests a traitor among us. Arlo finished, his expression grave. Someone who wants my sister dead and is willing to collaborate with surface terrorists to accomplish it. The chamber erupted into anxious discussion. Isabella used the distraction to move closer to Logan. "You knew this," she whispered. "How?" "The gun," he replied quietly. "Standard light. Less dark operatives use pulse weapons. This assassin carried a modified kinetic weapon. Specialty ammunition designed to penetrate bioshields. Bioshields that only the noble families have access to." Isabella realized, a chill running through her. They knew exactly who I was and what protections I would have. Logan nodded slightly. "The question is, who benefits most from your death?" Isabella's gaze drifted to her brother, who was now engaged in intense conversation with several council members. His expression appropriately concerned, yet somehow satisfied. "Order!" called Councillor Vex, silencing the chamber. "This revelation changes matters considerably. Lady Arden's safety is now a matter of public security. The blood pact will be honored, but with conditions." Isabella stiffened, prepared to object, but the councillor continued. "Mr. Kane will serve as Lady Arden's primary protector, as the pact demands. However, he will be required to report any findings regarding the assassination attempt directly to this council. Additionally, he will undergo a standard identity verification process to confirm he has no prior connections to known enemies of Viridian." "Fair terms. All things considered," Isabella nodded her acceptance. "Furthermore," Vex added, "given the sensitive nature of the situation, Lady Arden is temporarily relieved of her diplomatic duties until the threat is neutralized." "Objection," Isabella said sharply. "The treaty negotiations with the surface traders cannot proceed without Arden representation." "A valid concern," Arlo interjected smoothly. "As second in the Arden line, I am prepared to assume these responsibilities temporarily. The family's interests will remain protected." Isabella recognized the political maneuver for what it was. Her brother had been seeking greater influence in foreign affairs for months. This crisis provided the perfect opportunity. "The Council approves Lord Arlo's appointment as acting diplomatic representative," Vex announced, before Isabella could formulate a counter-argument. "Lady Arden will focus on her recovery and cooperate fully with the investigation into this attack. This session is adjourned." As the council members began to disperse, Isabella felt the weight of what had just transpired. In the span of a few hours, she had nearly been killed, bound herself to a mysterious outsider through an ancient pact, and lost her diplomatic authority to her ambitious brother. Logan leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Politics moves quickly in Viridian." "This was orchestrated," she replied under her breath. "The assassination attempt, the emergency session, my brother's convenient return from the lower districts. The question is whether these events were orchestrated by the same hand or by competing interests," Logan murmured. "Either way, you've been effectively isolated from power." Isabella's jaw clenched. "Not for long. The Blood Pact gives us an advantage they don't expect. Freedom to operate outside normal channels." "And what exactly do you plan to do with that freedom, Lady Arden?" She met his gaze with newfound determination. "Find out who wants me dead, Mr. Arcane, and make them regret ever targeting an Arden." As they exited the council chamber, neither noticed the figure watching from the shadows. A member of the Forbidden Guard, whose loyalty had been purchased long ago by interests that had nothing to do with Viridian security. The Arden family estate occupied an entire tier of Viridian's carefully stratified society. Unlike the ostentatious mansions of newer money, the Arden residents projected power through understated elegance, clean lines, ancient stonework salvaged from surface ruins, and gardens cultivated with plants genetically modified to thrive in artificial light. Isabella led Logan through a series of biometric checkpoints, each recognizing her unique biological signature. The final door required a blood sample, a small lancet extending from the wall to prick her finger. "Dramatic," Logan commented as the massive door slid open silently. "Old security is often the most effective," Isabella replied. "Biometric scans can be fooled with the right technology. Blood recognition reads genetic markers that can't be replicated. Unless someone has access to your genetic profile." Isabella cast him a sidelong glance. "You're not very reassuring for a personal protector." "I prefer realistic to reassuring," Logan said, following her into a spacious atrium where actual sunlight, a precious commodity in the underground city, streamed through a series of carefully angled mirrors and light tubes that connected to the surface, especially when dealing with assassination attempts. Several servants bowed as they passed, their expressions carefully neutral, despite the obvious curiosity about the stranger accompanying their mistress. Isabella acknowledged them with slight nods, but offered no explanation for Logan's presence. She led him to a private study, considerably larger than the questioning chamber, but similarly furnished with physical books and antique furnishings. Once the door closed behind them, Isabella seemed to deflate slightly, the perfect posture of nobility giving way to exhaustion. "You should rest," Logan said, his tone softer than she had heard it before. "Rest is a luxury I can't afford right now." Isabella moved to a cabinet concealed behind a bookshelf, pressing her palm against it to reveal a hidden compartment. From within, she withdrew a device about the size of her palm, a scrambler that would disrupt any surveillance equipment. "Paranoid even in your own home?" Logan raised an eyebrow. "My father taught me that true power lies in controlling who knows what," she replied, activating the device. A soft hum filled the room, indicating that they could now speak freely. "The walls of nobility have always had ears." She gestured for him to sit, then took her own place behind an ornate desk that had clearly seen generations of use. "Now, Mr. Nkane, I believe it's time for complete honesty between us. The blood pact connects us more deeply than you might realize. Deception between bonded individuals causes physical discomfort." Logan settled into the chair opposite her, his posture relaxed yet alert. "Then ask your questions, Lady Arden. I'll answer what I can. Let's start with the obvious. Who are you, really? Not the name, I believe Logan Kane is genuine enough. But your purpose in Viridian." A brief hesitation, then, "I was a member of the Surface Reconnaissance Unit, military specialist trained to survive in the hostile environment above. After my service ended, I became a bounty hunter of sorts, tracking threats between the underground cities." Isabella studied him. "The scar on your jaw, surface radiation burn?" Logan's fingers unconsciously traced the jagged line. "Yes. My mask seal failed during a dust storm 5 years ago. I was lucky to survive." "And the assassin? You said you'd been tracking them." "Sarah Vane has killed 7 high-ranking officials across 3 cities in the past year. All of them were involved in negotiations with surface representatives." Logan leaned forward. "She's skilled, or was, but not the mastermind. Someone with resources and influence has been targeting individuals who support peaceful relations with surface communities." Isabella processed this information, connecting it to her own diplomatic work. "I've been advocating for reduced trade restrictions with the Arizona Dome. It would benefit both our societies, but the Brotherhood has resisted any policy that might diminish their control over resource allocation." "Making you a logical target," Logan confirmed. "But the method was unusual. Vane typically uses untraceable toxins, quick, clean, deniable. A public assassination attempt with a specialized weapon suggests a different objective." "To send a message," Isabella concluded. "But to whom? And what message?" Logan shrugged. "That's what we need to find out. along with who provided Vane's credentials and how they knew she'd be targeting you specifically. The unspoken implication hung between them. Someone close to Isabella had betrayed her. "I have my suspicions," she said after a moment. "My brother's timely return and immediate assumption of my diplomatic duties is convenient." "Arlo Arden," Logan said thoughtfully. "His reputation precedes him. Ambitious, charismatic, popular with both the traditional houses and the progressive factions. A political chameleon. And my only surviving family," Isabella added, a hint of sadness coloring her voice. "I've never questioned his loyalty to the Arden name, even when we've disagreed on policy." "Family makes for the most dangerous enemies," Logan observed. "They know your weaknesses, your habits, your security protocols." Isabella's expression hardened. "If Arlo is involved, I'll need irrefutable evidence before making any accusations. The Arden name still carries weight in Viridian, but a blood feud between the last two heirs would create dangerous instability. Then we start with what we know for certain." Logan stood, moving to examine a map of Viridian displayed on one wall. "Vane had inside help. Someone provided her with credentials and intelligence about your schedule. We need to identify that person. Maris is leading the official investigation, but she reports to the council, including my brother." Isabella joined him at the map. "We need our own line of inquiry." Logan's finger traced a path through the lower levels of the city. "Vane would have had a safe house, equipment caches, possibly local contacts. The Forbidden Guard will be searching, but they'll be constrained by protocol and reporting structures. Whereas we," Isabella said with the ghost of a smile, "have the freedom of the Blood Pact. The lower districts respect the old ways, more than council authority." "You're suggesting we conduct our own investigation in the Undercity?" Logan seemed surprised. "That's not exactly safe territory for an Arden." "I didn't always wear the family mantle, Mr. Kane." Something shifted in Isabella's demeanor, a glimpse of the woman beneath the noble facade. "Before my father's death, I spent considerable time in the lower districts, learning what life was like beyond the privileged tiers." "Slumming?" The question held no judgment, merely curiosity. "Understanding," she corrected. "You can't effectively lead people whose lives you don't comprehend. My father taught me that an Arden's duty extends to all of Viridian, not just those in power." Logan studied her with new interest. "Your father sounds like an unusual nobleman." "He was..." Pride and grief mingled in her voice. "And his views weren't always popular with the Brotherhood. His death 3 years ago was officially ruled an accident. But..." "You have doubts?" Isabella nodded slowly. "Which is why I've continued his work, despite resistance, and why someone might want to remove me from the diplomatic process." A soft chime interrupted them. Someone requesting entry to the study. Isabella deactivated the scrambler and pressed a button on her desk. "Yes?" "My lady," came the voice of her house steward. "Lord Arlo has returned and requests a moment of your time. He's brought a guest, Dr. Evelyn Reese from the Medical Guild." Isabella and Logan exchanged glances. "The council wasted no time," she murmured. "Dr. Reese is their premier expert on blood-based rituals and bonds. To verify our pact? Or to find a way to break it?" Isabella replied grimly. "Inform my brother I'll receive them in the main salon in 10 minutes, she told the steward. After the connection closed, Logan asked, "Can the pact be broken by medical intervention?" "Theoretically, no. The blood pact transcends physical biology. It's tied to what old texts call the soul essence. But the Medical Guild has been researching ways to manipulate such bonds for generations." Isabella moved toward a concealed door at the back of the study. "Which is why we need to move quickly. Follow me." The hidden passage led them through a narrow corridor that sloped downward, eventually opening into what appeared to be an ancient tunnel system, predating Viridian itself. "The old transit network?" Logan recognized. I thought these were sealed off during the third reconstruction. Officially, yes. Isabella retrieved a pair of light orbs from a recess in the wall, activating one and handing the other to Logan. But my ancestors believed in contingency plans. This particular tunnel connects to the gray market in the lower districts. Clever, Logan admitted. Though I'm surprised the great Lady Arden knows the way to the city's most notorious black market. Isabella's smile held a hint of mischief that transformed her features. There's a great deal you don't know about me, Mr. Kane. Perhaps the Blood Pact will reveal more than either of us anticipated. As they ventured deeper into the tunnel, the bond between them pulsed with a subtle warmth, a reminder that their lives were now intertwined by forces neither fully understood. What had begun as an assassination attempt was evolving into something far more complex. A web of politics, ancient magic, and personal vendettas that would test them both beyond measure. And somewhere in the shadows of Viridian, the true architect of these events watched through borrowed eyes, patient as a spider at the center of a carefully constructed web. The gray market existed in a liminal space between Viridian's strictly regulated economy and the chaos of true black market operations. Housed in the hollowed-out remains of old industrial complexes, it operated under an unspoken agreement with the upper districts, maintain a semblance of order, pay nominal tributes to the Brotherhood, and certain activities would be overlooked. Isabella and Logan emerged from the tunnel into a service corridor that smelled of machine oil and synthetic spices. The contrast between the pristine elegance of the Arden estate and the gritty reality of the lower districts was jarring. Yet Isabella navigated the transition with practiced ease, her aristocratic posture giving way to a more casual stance that attracted less attention. From a concealed compartment near the tunnel exit, she retrieved 2 cloaks made of a matte material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Distortion fabric, Logan noted as he donned one. Military grade. Another of my father's precautions, Isabella replied, pulling up the hood to conceal her distinctive features. The market has eyes everywhere, and an Arden's presence would raise too many questions. They stepped into the crowded thoroughfare of the gray market, immediately enveloped by the controlled chaos of commerce that existed outside official channels. Vendors hawked everything from surface artifacts to synthesized pharmaceuticals, their stalls illuminated by mismatched lighting that created pools of harsh brightness amid comfortable shadow. Logan stayed close to Isabella, his body language that of a casual companion rather than a protector. Yet she noticed how his gaze constantly assessed their surroundings, cataloging potential threats and escape routes with military precision. Where exactly are we headed? He asked quietly. The Nexus, Isabella replied, navigating through the press of bodies with surprising agility. It's an information exchange run by an old associate of mine. Logan raised an eyebrow but didn't press for details. The bond between them thrummed with a constant awareness. He could sense her determination, just as she could feel his watchfulness. It was an intimate connection that should have been disconcerting given their brief acquaintance, yet somehow felt natural, as if the Blood Pact had merely formalized something that already existed between them. The Nexus occupied what had once been a central processing node for Viridian's water reclamation system. Now, it served as a gathering place for those who traded in the most valuable currency of the underground city: information. The entrance was marked only by a subtle glyph etched into the metal doorframe, 3 intersecting lines forming a triangle with a dot at its center. Isabella pressed her palm against the glyph, which illuminated briefly with a blue glow. The door slid open with a soft hiss of hydraulics. Inside, the space was arranged like a traditional tea house, with private booths separated by screens of woven fiber optics that shifted colors continuously, creating a disorienting effect for anyone trying to observe conversations in adjacent sections. The center of the room featured a circular bar where patrons could order various stimulants and mind enhancers, all carefully calibrated to enhance perception without impeding judgment. A tall woman with intricate circuitry embedded in her exposed forearms approached them. Her eyes, clearly artificial with their metallic irises, scanning them both before recognition dawned. "Well," she said in a low, melodious voice, "the sparrow returns to the nest after a long winter." "The nest endures through all seasons," Isabella replied, completing what was evidently a passphrase. The woman's face softened slightly. "It's been years, Izzy. I thought you'd forgotten the way down here. Some paths remain engraved in memory. Tricks." Isabella lowered her hood, revealing her face to the woman but keeping it turned away from the other patrons. "This is Logan. He's with me." Trix assessed Logan with a gaze that seemed to penetrate beyond physical appearance. "Bloodbound," she stated, rather than asked. "Fresh, too. Interesting circumstances." "I imagine." "We need information," Isabella said, steering the conversation back to their purpose. "Privately." Trix nodded, leading them to a booth in the far corner, the most isolated position in the establishment. Once they were seated, and a privacy field had been activated, creating a bubble of absolute security around their conversation. Trix leaned back with a curious expression. "So, the Arden Princess descends from her tower with a bound protector in tow. The whispers have already reached the lower districts. You know, an assassination attempt in the heart of the Brotherhood's palace. Very bold, very public." "What else do the whispers say?" Isabella asked. Trix's artificial eyes whirred slightly as she adjusted their focus. "That the Brotherhood is in disarray, that the Arden siblings are at odds, and that surface tensions are reaching a breaking point. Oh, and that a mysterious outsider killed Sarah Vane with an antique weapon that shouldn't exist anymore." Logan tensed at the mention of the assassin's name. "You knew Vane?" "I know of everyone who passes through the gray market," Trix replied, her tone neutral. "Vane was here 3 times in the past month. She paid well for specific information about Brotherhood security protocols and Arden family movements." Isabella leaned forward. "Who was her contact?" "That's the interesting part." Trix glanced between them. "She met with different people each time, all of them wearing scrambler tech that prevented identification. But they had one thing in common. They all bore the mark of the Forbidden Guard." Logan's expression darkened. "The infiltration goes deeper than we thought." "The Guard is supposed to be incorruptible," Isabella said, though her tone suggested she knew better than to believe in such absolutes. "Their loyalty is ensured through blood oaths to the Brotherhood. Blood oaths can be circumvented by those who understand the old sciences." Trix offered. "There are procedures, expensive, dangerous, but effective for those desperate enough." "Or those with powerful backing," Logan added. Trix studied him with renewed interest. "You're not just any surface dweller, are you? You know too much about our ways." "I know enough to recognize when ancient traditions are being weaponized against those they were meant to protect," he replied evenly. A moment of silent assessment passed between them before Trix turned back to Isabella. "What exactly are you looking for, Izzy? Information has a price, even for old friends." Isabella reached into her cloak and withdrew a small object wrapped in silk. When she unwrapped it, a crystal vial containing a luminescent blue liquid was revealed. "Distilled memory," Trix breathed, eyes widening. "Pure and stabilized. Where did you get this?" "My father's private collection," Isabella replied. "He believed in preserving experiences directly, not just through records or recollections. Memory distillation was a rare and heavily regulated process. The extraction and preservation of actual memories in liquid form, capable of being experienced by others through specialized equipment. The practice had been largely abandoned due to the psychological risks involved, but the existing samples were invaluable to collectors and scholars." "This buys you considerable credit," Trix said, carefully rewrapping the vial. "What do you need?" Everything you have on Vane's movements before the assassination attempt. Her contacts, her safe houses, any equipment she might have stored, and— Isabella hesitated briefly. Any connection to the Light Less Dark organization. Trix's expression grew serious. You're treading dangerous ground, Izzy. The Light Less Dark isn't just another fringe group. They have resources, discipline, and a surprising amount of support even in the upper districts. They're a movement, not just an organization. All the more reason to understand their connection to what happened, Isabella insisted, with a resigned nod. Trix activated a personal data terminal embedded in the table's surface. Her modified fingers moved across it with inhuman speed, accessing encrypted databases and secure channels that shouldn't have been available to anyone outside Viridian's official intelligence apparatus. Vane maintained 3 safe houses in the lower districts, she eventually reported. 2 have already been raided by the Forbidden Guard, but the third, her primary location, remains untouched. It's in Sector 17, Old Manufacturing District, Sub-Level 3. Why would the Guard miss her primary location? Logan questioned. Because it's registered under the name Maris Vrel, Trix replied, with a pointed look at Isabella. The implication was clear. Maris, captain of the Forbidden Guard, had deliberately kept this information from the official investigation. Coordinates, Isabella requested, her voice tight with controlled anger. Trix transferred the data to a secure chip, which she slid across the table. As for the Light Less Dark connection, that's where things get interesting. Vane wasn't working for them, at least not directly. She was using their protocols and equipment, but the money trail leads elsewhere. Where? Logan pressed. To a shell corporation called Meridian Enterprises. Very sophisticated financial structure, multiple layers of encryption and misdirection. Trix's expression became troubled. But I managed to trace one payment authorization that contained embedded metadata, a personal signature of sorts. She projected a small hologram above the table, a stylized emblem combining the Arden family crest with a distinctive modification, a dagger piercing through its center. Isabella stared at the symbol, her face draining of color. That's Arlo's personal seal. He uses it for confidential communications. Your brother is financing assassins to target you? Logan's disbelief was evident. That's beyond political ambition. It's fratricide. There must be another explanation, Isabella insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. Arlo and I have our differences, but he wouldn't— The evidence suggests otherwise, Trix interrupted gently. And there's more. The Light Less Dark has undergone a significant reorganization in recent months. New leadership, new tactics, new resources. They're no longer just targeting the Brotherhood's policies. They're actively working to dismantle the entire power structure of Viridian. Under whose leadership? Logan asked, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. Trix hesitated, her gaze fixing on Isabella with something like sympathy. They call him the Illuminator. His true identity is protected by multiple security protocols, but rumors suggest he's someone with intimate knowledge of Viridian's governing systems. Someone raised within them. Isabella closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the implication. When she opened them again, her expression had hardened into resolute determination. We need to verify this information directly. If what you're suggesting is true, if my brother is not only behind the attempt on my life, but also leading a revolutionary movement, then Viridian stands on the precipice of civil war. Logan placed a hand over hers on the table, a gesture of support that felt natural despite their short acquaintance. The blood pact between them pulsed with shared purpose. Sector 17 first, he said quietly. We need concrete evidence before confronting someone with the resources of an Arden. Isabella nodded, her fingers briefly turning to grasp his before withdrawing. Thank you, Trix. Your information may have saved more than just my life. As they prepared to leave, Trix caught Isabella's arm. Be careful, Izzy. The light less dark has eyes everywhere, and if your brother truly is the Illuminator, he knows you better than anyone else in Viridian. That works both ways, Isabella replied grimly. No one knows Arlo's weaknesses better than I do. They departed the Nexus through a different exit that led directly into the service tunnels running beneath the Gray Market. As they navigated the dimly lit passages, Logan broke the tense silence. You don't seem entirely surprised by the possibility of your brother's betrayal. Isabella's pace didn't falter, but her voice carried a weight of long-held suspicion. Arlo changed after our father's death. He became calculated. Where once he argued passionately for his beliefs, he began to manipulate and maneuver with cold precision. I attributed it to grief, to the burden of responsibility suddenly thrust upon us both. But you had doubts. Fragments that never quite fit together, she admitted. Resources missing from family accounts. Meetings that couldn't be explained. A gradual distancing from our father's closest allies. Little things that, taken individually, could be dismissed, but together formed a pattern I didn't want to see. The tunnel branched, and Isabella took the left path without hesitation, demonstrating her familiarity with these hidden routes. Family loyalty is a powerful blinder, Logan observed without judgment. As is ambition, Isabella countered. If Arlo truly is the Illuminator, then his goals extend far beyond simply assuming my diplomatic duties. He's positioning himself to fundamentally remake Viridian's power structure, with himself at its center. Using the light less dark as his instrument, Logan concluded. A brilliant strategy, actually. He maintains his position within the established order, while simultaneously building the force that will eventually overthrow it. Isabella shot him a sharp look. You sound almost admiring. I can appreciate tactical intelligence even in an enemy, Logan replied. Understanding his methods is the first step to countering them. They reached a junction where the service tunnel connected to a larger transportation shaft, equipped with a maintenance platform. Isabella activated the platform's controls, setting their destination to Sector 17. As the platform began its descent, Logan asked the question that hung between them. If we confirm your brother's involvement, what then? He's still your blood. Isabella's gaze remained fixed on the passing levels, her profile illuminated by the intermittent lights of the shaft. Blood has never been just about family ties in Viridian, Mr. Kane. It's power, legacy, obligation. She turned to face him fully. And sometimes, it's sacrifice. The platform continued its silent descent into the depths of Viridian, carrying them toward evidence that would either exonerate Arlo Arden or confirm him as the architect of betrayal that could tear the underground city apart. Either way, Isabella knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Not for her family, not for Viridian, and certainly not for the blood bond that now tied her fate to the enigmatic man at her side. Sector 17 had once been Viridian's industrial heart, manufacturing the components necessary for underground survival. Now, it stood as a monument to obsolescence, vast chambers filled with silent machinery, abandoned when newer, more efficient processes were developed in the higher sectors. The air hung heavy with the scent of metal and oil, the residual signature of productivity, long since faded. Isabella and Logan moved through the shadows with practiced caution, their distortion cloaks rendering them nearly invisible in the dim emergency lighting that still functioned in the main corridors. They had encountered no one thus far. This level of the sector had been officially decommissioned decades ago, making it perfect for someone seeking absolute privacy. Sub-level 3 should be accessed through that maintenance shaft, Isabella whispered, gesturing toward a narrow opening partially concealed behind a defunct processing unit. Logan nodded, taking point as they approached. The shaft descended vertically for about 20 meters, before opening onto a corridor that showed signs of recent use, the dust on the floor disturbed by regular footprints. the emergency light supplemented by portable illumination units mounted at intervals. "Someone's been maintaining this area," Logan observed quietly. "Recently, too." They followed the corridor until it terminated at a reinforced door, modern security embedded in the ancient industrial architecture. A biometric scanner guarded access, its interface glowing softly in the gloom. "Maris's security credentials," Isabella murmured. "This confirms a connection, but we still don't know if she was complicit or if her identity was stolen." Logan examined the scanner without touching it. "This is military grade, not something a civilian assassin would typically have access to. Someone with significant resources provided this. Can we bypass it?" Logan reached into his jacket and withdrew a small device, a flat disk about the size of a coin. "Universal bypass. It won't work on the highest security systems. But for a private installation like this..." He placed the device against the scanner. It adhered to the surface, tiny filaments extending to interface with the system. After several tense seconds, the scanner emitted a soft beep of acceptance, and the door slid open. The space beyond was unexpectedly well-appointed, a combination of living quarters and operational base. One wall was dominated by an advanced communications array, another by weapons storage. A sleeping area occupied one corner, while a workstation filled with technical equipment took up the center of the room. "Secure the door," Isabella instructed as she moved directly to the workstation. Logan sealed the entrance behind them, then began a methodical search of the living area, while Isabella accessed the computer systems. The blood pact between them created an efficient partnership. They moved in coordination without needing to discuss their approach, each instinctively complementing the other's actions. "Encrypted communications," Isabella reported, her fingers moving rapidly across the interface. "But the encryption key is stored locally. Amateur mistake for someone otherwise so careful." "Maybe not a mistake," Logan called from where he was examining the weapons cache. "These aren't standard assassin's tools. They're demonstration models, labeled and arranged for presentation." Isabella looked up sharply. "What are you suggesting?" "This isn't just a safe house," Logan said, his expression grim. "It's a recruitment center. Look at how everything is organized. The weapons display, the propaganda materials, the communications setup. This is designed to impress potential allies, not to serve as a functional base." Isabella returned her attention to the computer, accessing the decrypted files with growing concern. "You're right. There are dossiers here on key members of the Forbidden Guard, complete with psychological profiles and potential leverage points. Vane wasn't just planning to kill me. She was laying groundwork for something much larger." Logan joined her at the workstation, studying the displayed information. "A coup," he concluded. "Systematic recruitment within the Forbidden Guard. Assassination of key opposition figures, followed by a coordinated takeover of critical infrastructure. With the light less dark providing the ideological framework and public support," Isabella finished. "It's brilliant in its way, using the Brotherhood's own elite forces against it." As she navigated deeper into the files, a protected folder caught her attention. Unlike the others, this one required a secondary authentication, a voice print combined with a specific phrase. "We need to access that folder," Logan said, noting her focus. Isabella considered the problem. "We'd need Vane's voice, or whoever else has authorization." "Not necessarily." Logan reached into his pocket and withdrew what appeared to be a small recording device. "Standard infiltration equipment. It captures vocal patterns and can reconstruct specific phonemes to form new phrases." "And you just happen to carry this with you?" Isabella raised an eyebrow. "I told you I track threats between cities," he replied with a slight shrug. "This is a tool of the trade." "And what trade is that, exactly?" Her question carried a hint of suspicion that hadn't been present before. Logan met her gaze directly. "I was being honest about the surface reconnaissance unit. What I didn't mention was that after my official service ended, I was recruited by a coalition of underground cities to monitor and neutralize threats that cross jurisdictional boundaries. Assassins like Vane are my primary targets. Isabella processed this revelation. So you're some kind of inner-city operative? Essentially, yes. We have no official designation. The politics between cities are too complex for formal cooperation. But there are those who recognize that certain threats require a coordinated response. The blood pact between them pulsed with the truth of his words. Isabella could feel that he was being honest, even if it wasn't the complete story. And your presence in Viridian when Vane made her attempt? Not coincidence, he admitted. I've been tracking her for months. When intelligence suggested she was targeting a high-ranking member of Viridian's nobility, I entered the city to intercept her. I didn't know you were the specific target until shortly before the attempt. Isabella nodded slowly, accepting his explanation. Then, let's use your equipment to access these files. Time is working against us. Arlo and Dr. Reese will have realized I'm not at the estate by now. Logan activated the voice reconstruction device, inputting parameters based on surveillance recordings of Vane that he had collected during his tracking operation. After several minutes of processing, the device produced a simulated phrase matching the authentication pattern identified in the security protocol. Let light vanquish darkness. The device spoke in Vane's voice, a chilling reminder that they were accessing the files of a woman Logan had killed to save Isabella. The folder unlocked, revealing its contents on the main display. What they saw caused both of them to fall silent in shock. Detailed plans for what was labeled the Illumination, a coordinated strike against Viridian's power structure, scheduled to begin in less than 24 hours. The first phase included targeted assassinations of council members who opposed light-less-dark ideology, followed by a takeover of key infrastructure nodes by compromised members of the Forbidden Guard. But what truly captured their attention was the central component of the plan, a ceremony in the underground arena, where the Illuminator would reveal himself and activate an ancient device called the Pact, described as a blood key capable of overriding Viridian's most fundamental security systems. The Pact, Isabella whispered, her face pale. It's not just a legend. You know what this is? Logan asked, studying the schematics displayed on the screen. A blood-based technology from the early days of underground settlement, she explained, her voice hushed with a mixture of awe and dread. It was created as a failsafe, a means to transfer complete control of a city's systems to a new authority in times of crisis. It requires the blood of the founding families, freely given or forcibly taken. Logan's expression darkened. And as one of the last two Ardens? My blood is a key component, Isabella confirmed, as is Arlo's. But the process was deemed too dangerous, too open to abuse. All records of it were supposedly destroyed generations ago. Clearly, not all of them. Logan gestured to the detailed instructions on the screen. And your brother has found them. Isabella continued reading, her dismay growing with each revelation. The assassination attempt wasn't meant to kill me. It was a contingency plan. According to this, Arlo preferred to convert me to his cause, to have me willingly contribute to the Pact. Vane was instructed to eliminate me only if I proved irredeemable. Your brother still wanted family unity, in his way, Logan observed. He just wanted it on his terms. And now? Isabella's voice had grown cold. With the blood pact binding us together, I've become an even greater threat to his plans. He'll see you as an unknown variable, someone he can't control or predict. Which explains Dr. Reese's convenient appearance. Logan concluded. They're looking for a way to break our bond before the illumination begins. Isabella stood abruptly, her decision made. We need to get to the underground arena. If we can secure it before the ceremony, we might be able to prevent the illumination entirely. It won't be that simple, Logan cautioned. Your brother has clearly been planning this for years, He'll have contingencies for every possibility. Not every possibility, Isabella countered. He couldn't have anticipated the blood pact. It gives us an advantage he can't fully understand or counter. As if in response to her words, the security system suddenly blared an alert. Proximity warnings indicating multiple individuals approaching the safe house. Logan moved to a surveillance panel near the weapons cache. "Forbidden Guard," he reported grimly. "At least 6 of them, in full tactical gear. They know we're here." Isabella quickly extracted the critical data from the computer system, transferring it to a secure chip. "We need an alternate exit. This level should connect to the old emergency evacuation tunnels." Logan retrieved 2 pulse weapons from the cache, tossing one to Isabella, who caught it with practiced ease. "You know how to use that?" "My father believed in practical education," she replied, checking the weapon's charge with familiar movements. The evacuation tunnel entrance should be concealed in the southeast corner, standard industrial design from that era. They located the hidden panel, just as the first sounds of the Forbidden Guard attempting to breach the reinforced door reached them. Logan pried the panel open, revealing a narrow passage beyond. "You first," he instructed. "If they break through while I'm still here, I'll buy you time." Isabella hesitated. "The blood pact." "Works both ways," he reminded her. "I'm your protector, remember? Now go." She slipped into the passage, Logan following close behind and sealing the panel just as the main door to the safe house gave way with a metallic groan. They navigated the cramped evacuation tunnel by the light of emergency strips that still functioned after decades of neglect, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter behind them. "They'll figure out where we've gone soon enough," Logan said as they emerged into a larger maintenance corridor, several hundred meters from the safe house. "We need to get to the surface levels quickly." Isabella nodded, already mapping their route in her mind. "There's a freight elevator shaft 2 sections over that should still be operational. It will take us to the mid-levels. From there, we can access my family's private transport network." As they moved through the abandoned industrial sector, the bond between them seemed to strengthen, a tangible connection that guided their movements in perfect synchronization. It was as if the blood pact was responding to the danger, enhancing their awareness of each other and their surroundings. "The bond," Logan observed quietly as they reached the elevator shaft. "You can feel it too?" "Yes," Isabella confirmed as she worked to activate the ancient machinery. "It's growing stronger. The old texts mentioned this, how the blood pact evolves in response to shared purpose and danger." The elevator platform shuddered to life, descending to their level with a groan of protesting metal. As they boarded, Logan positioned himself protectively between Isabella and the open shaft, his weapon ready. "If the Forbidden Guard has been compromised to the extent these files suggest," he said as the platform began its ascent, "then nowhere in Viridian is truly safe for us. Not even your family estate." "I know," Isabella replied, her expression resolute. "But we have one advantage they don't expect. The underground arena isn't just a venue. It's built on the site of the original blood ritual chambers used by the founding families. My ancestors ensured that an Arden would always have access, regardless of who controlled the official channels." Logan raised an eyebrow. "Hidden passages?" "Something like that," Isabella said with a grim smile. "My father showed me when I came of age. It's knowledge passed only to the head of the family." "Which means Arlo doesn't know about it," Logan realized. "Exactly. As the eldest, I was entrusted with secrets he never received." The elevator continued its steady climb through the levels of Viridian, each illuminated section revealing a different aspect of the stratified society they were fighting to protect, or to transform, depending on one's perspective. "Your brother believes he's fighting for a better Viridian," Logan observed, studying her reaction. "The light, less dark ideology appeals to those who see the injustice in the current system." Isabella's jaw tightened. "There are legitimate grievances. Yes. The Brotherhood has grown corrupt in many ways, the noble families complacent. But revolution through bloodshed only replaces one tyranny with another. My father understood this. He worked for gradual, lasting change. Arlo lacks the patience for such methods. And you? Logan asked. What kind of Viridian do you envision? The question seemed to catch her off guard. For a moment, the political mask fell away, revealing the woman beneath, passionate, idealistic, burdened by responsibility but not crushed by it. A Viridian where advancement is determined by merit rather than birth, she said quietly. Where the resources of the city benefit all its citizens, not just those in the upper tiers. Where we maintain our traditions without being enslaved by them. Noble goals, Logan acknowledged. Not so different from what the light less dark claims to want. The difference is in the method, Isabella insisted. And in the truth behind the rhetoric. Arlo doesn't want to dismantle the hierarchy. He wants to replace it with his own. The files we found make that clear. His version of illumination still leaves him at the top, with absolute control through the Hut Pact. The elevator reached the mid-levels, the doors opening onto a much more maintained section of the city, a commercial district bustling with activity, despite the late hour. They stepped out, immediately adjusting their posture and pace to blend with the crowd. We need to change our appearance, Logan said, noting a public alert displayed on a nearby screen. Their images, labeled as persons of interest, in connection with the assassination attempt. This way, Isabella directed, leading him through a series of increasingly exclusive shopping arcades until they reached a boutique with a discreet sign identifying it as Transformations. The proprietor, an elegant woman with subtle genetic modifications that gave her features an ethereal quality, recognized Isabella despite her disguise. Lady Arden, she greeted with a respectful nod. How may we serve? Complete alteration, Madame Vex. Highest priority, absolute discretion. Isabella placed a family token on the counter, a small disc of rare metal that carried more weight than any currency. Of course. The woman swept the token into her palm, then led them to a private chamber at the back of the establishment. Full spectrum services are at your disposal. How dramatic should the changes be? Unrecognizable, Logan answered before Isabella could. Even to close associates. Within an hour, they emerged transformed. Isabella's distinctive dark hair had been replaced with short, platinum strands, styled in a fashion popular among the commercial elite. Her facial structure appeared subtly altered through a combination of cosmetic appliances and light-bending makeup. Logan's changes were even more dramatic. His scar eliminated, his features softened, his entire bearing shifted from military precision to the casual confidence of a successful merchant. The alterations will last approximately 72 hours before beginning to degrade, Madame Vex informed them as they prepared to leave. The biosignature masking will fool standard security scans, but not a full medical examination. It will serve our needs, Isabella assured her, donning the new identity as completely as she had the physical disguise. Her posture, her speech patterns, even the subtle expressions that crossed her face, all transformed to match her altered appearance. They departed through a private exit that opened into an exclusive residential district, a section of Viridian reserved for wealthy merchants and minor nobility. From there, they made their way to a private transport hub where Isabella accessed her family system using codes that bypassed the standard identification protocols. The arena is in the oldest section of Viridian, she explained, as they boarded a sleek transport pod. It predates even the Brotherhood, built directly over the ritual chambers used by the founding families. And that's where Arlo plans to activate the Hut Pact, Logan confirmed. Using your blood, willingly given or forcibly taken. Isabella programmed their destination, her movements efficient despite the gravity of their situation. The Hut Pact requires more than just ardent blood. It needs representatives from all 7 founding families, which means Arlo has either secured their cooperation or plans to take their blood by force as well. A mass assassination during the ceremony? Logan suggested. Possible, but risky. More likely he's been collecting blood samples over time, through medical examinations or social events where such things could be acquired discreetly. The transport pod accelerated into the main transit tube, whisking them toward the heart of Old Viridian. The Hut Pact ritual is specific. It requires the blood to be fresh for the primary activator, but stored samples can be used for the secondary components. Logan absorbed this information, his analytical mind already formulating potential countermeasures. And your brother plans to serve as the primary activator. Yes, as an Arden. His blood carries the necessary genetic markers. The Hut Pact was designed to ensure that control of Viridian could only pass to those with a legitimate claim through the founding bloodlines. A safeguard that becomes a vulnerability when exploited by someone within the system, Logan observed. The transport pod slowed as it approached their destination. The sleek, modern architecture of the upper and mid-levels, giving way to the more organic structures of Old Viridian. Here, the buildings seemed to grow from the cavern walls themselves, shaped from the living rock in styles that blended function with a primal aesthetic that spoke to the earliest days of underground settlement. The arena stood at the center of this ancient district, a massive circular structure with high walls of polished black stone. External illumination was minimal, creating an atmosphere of solemn mystery that discouraged casual visitors. Despite its historical significance, few citizens of modern Viridian ever ventured here, except during the rare ceremonial events sanctioned by the Brotherhood. The main entrances will be guarded, Isabella said as they disembarked from the transport pod at a discreet distance from the arena. Even more so if preparations for tomorrow's ceremony have begun. Then we use your family's secret access, Logan confirmed. Isabella led him through a series of narrow alleys between the ancient structures, navigating with the confidence of someone following a well-memorized path. Eventually, they reached what appeared to be a maintenance entrance to one of the buildings adjacent to the arena, a simple door with an old-fashioned mechanical lock. From beneath her clothing, Isabella withdrew a key on a chain, not the advanced biometric devices used throughout modern Viridian, but a physical key of twisted metal that looked as ancient as the door it was designed to open. Some technologies endure because of their simplicity, she explained, inserting the key into the lock. No electronic signature to trace, no network to hack, no power source to fail. The door opened with a soft click, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. Isabella retrieved 2 light orbs from a recess just inside the entrance, activating them with a touch. These passages were built by the first Arden to serve on the Brotherhood Council, she explained, as they began their descent. He believed that no single group should have absolute control over Viridian's most sacred spaces. The other founding families created similar access points, though I doubt many remember them now. The staircase spiraled deeper than Logan had expected, the temperature dropping with each turn until their breath formed visible clouds in the cold air. The walls changed from worked stone to natural cavern, occasionally interrupted by ancient supporting structures of a metal that didn't quite match any modern alloy. "We're beneath the foundations of the original settlement now," Isabella whispered, her voice carrying a reverence born of historical awareness. "These tunnels predate even the first formal mapping of Viridian." Eventually, the staircase opened into a narrow corridor lined with what appeared to be natural crystal formations. As their light orbs passed near, the crystals resonated with a soft blue luminescence, responding to their presence like living things. Blood crystals, Logan recognized, careful not to touch the glowing structures. "I've seen similar formations in other underground cities, but never this responsive." "They're attuned to the Arden bloodline," Isabella explained. "Another security measure. They'll allow me passage, but would become problematic for unauthorized visitors. Problematic how, exactly? The historical accounts are vague, but they mention a reckoning of blood and pain. She offered a grim smile. Our ancestors weren't known for their subtlety when it came to security. They continued in silence, the crystals brightening as they passed, creating a path of blue light that illuminated their way through increasingly complex tunnel systems. After several minutes of careful navigation, they reached what appeared to be a dead end, a smooth wall of black stone, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow when viewed from different angles. Isabella approached the wall without hesitation, pressing her palm against the center of the pattern. The stone warmed beneath her touch, the etchings glowing with the same blue light as the crystals in the tunnel. "Blood calls to blood," she murmured, a passphrase. Logan realized, as a seam appeared in the seemingly solid wall, widening into an opening just large enough for them to pass through single file. Beyond lay a small chamber that immediately opened into a much larger space, a vast cavern that extended upward into shadow. Directly above them, visible through a complex arrangement of mirrored surfaces, was the floor of the arena itself. "We're directly beneath the central platform," Isabella whispered, indicating the circular area visible through the mirrors. "From here, we can observe without being seen." Logan studied the ingenious system that allowed them to view the space above. "Your ancestors were thorough." "They understood the value of information," Isabella replied, "especially when gathered unobserved." The arena above was in the early stages of preparation. Workers moved across the space, arranging seating and installing technical equipment around a central dais. In the center of this platform stood an object that immediately captured their attention, a pedestal of dark stone supporting what appeared to be an ancient device constructed of metal, crystal, and other materials not immediately identifiable. "The Pact apparatus," Isabella breathed, her face pale in the reflected light. "I've only seen drawings in the family archives. It's supposed to be just a legend." Logan studied the device with professional assessment. Definitely pre-collapse technology, integrated with ritual elements. This matches the schematics we saw in Vane's files. They watched as technicians worked around the apparatus, connecting it to modern systems, while a figure in ceremonial robes supervised the process. The individual's face was concealed by an elaborate hood, but their commanding presence and the deference shown by the workers suggested someone of significant authority. "Arlo?" Logan questioned quietly. Isabella shook her head. "Too short. Likely one of the ritual specialists from the medical guild. The ceremony would require expert knowledge of the old blood sciences." As they observed, a new group entered the arena, members of the Forbidden Guard, escorting what appeared to be prisoners. 6 individuals, each representing one of the founding families other than Arden, were led to specially prepared areas surrounding the central platform. "The blood donors," Isabella realized with growing horror. "He's secured representatives from each bloodline." "Not willing participants, judging by the restraints," Logan noted grimly. One of the prisoners looked familiar, even from their limited vantage point. Counselor Vex, the elderly representative of the Hemlock family who had questioned Isabella in the council chamber. Despite his age, he stood proudly defiant as he was secured to a ritual post. "This is worse than we thought," Isabella whispered. "Arlo isn't just planning to take control of Viridian. He's staging a complete purge of the old power structure. Those aren't random representatives of the founding families. They're the current heads or direct heirs." Logan's expression darkened, creating a power vacuum that only he can fill. They continued to watch as more equipment was brought in, the preparations becoming increasingly elaborate. At one point, the robed figure approached the Pact apparatus and made an adjustment, causing the crystals embedded within it to pulse with a deep red glow. "It's being activated," Isabella said, alarm evident in her voice. "The preliminary attunement phase. According to the old texts, This begins the bonding process with the primary activator's blood. Your brother's blood, Logan confirmed. Yes, which means... Isabella faltered, a realization dawning. Logan, the ceremony isn't tomorrow. It's happening tonight. They're accelerating the timeline. As if confirming her assessment, a new figure entered the arena, tall, commanding, dressed in ceremonial robes of midnight blue trimmed with silver. Even without seeing his face, Isabella recognized her brother's distinctive gait and posture. "We need to stop this now," she said, already searching the chamber for a way to access the arena directly. Once the primary attunement is complete, the Hut Pact becomes increasingly difficult to disrupt. Logan caught her arm. "We can't just charge in there. The Forbidden Guard outnumber us significantly, and we don't know how many of the workers are also lightless dark operatives." "Then what do you suggest?" Isabella demanded, the urgency of the situation stripping away her usual composure. "We can't allow this to proceed." Logan studied the scene above them with tactical precision. "The ritual requires all 7 bloodlines. Without an Arden, without you, the Hut Pact can't be fully activated." "Arlo is an Arden," Isabella reminded him. "But according to what you've said, the Hut Pact requires representatives from all founding families. Your brother can't represent both the activator and the Arden contribution." Logan indicated the 6 prisoners. "Notice there's a space left open on the platform. That's meant for you." Isabella processed this insight. "So he still needs me. That's why Dr. Reese was brought to the estate, not just to examine the blood pact, but to help locate me when I disappeared." "Exactly. And that gives us an advantage." Logan's eyes narrowed as he formulated a plan. "We let them think they've found you." The underground arena pulsed with an energy that transcended the merely physical. As the Hut Pact apparatus continued its preliminary attunement, the ancient crystals embedded throughout the chamber's architecture responded in kind, creating a network of resonant power that those with blood sensitivity could feel like a second heartbeat beneath their skin. Arlo Arden stood at the center of it all, his face composed in an expression of solemn purpose as he supervised the final preparations. The ceremonial robes he wore, traditionally reserved for the highest rituals of the Brotherhood, had been subtly modified with the emblem of the light, less dark, worked into the intricate embroidery. "Illuminator!" a voice addressed him from behind. He turned to find Maris approaching, her Forbidden Guard uniform replaced with the more elaborate attire of a ceremony participant. Like all those who had pledged themselves to the light less dark, she wore a small crystal shard embedded at her temple, a physical connection to the ideals of the movement, and a symbol of her rejection of the old order. "Captain Maris," he acknowledged. "Is everything proceeding as planned?" "The 6 family representatives are secured," she reported. "The medical team is prepared to extract the required blood samples at your command. However," she hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with what she needed to say next. "My sister remains at large," Arlo finished for her, his voice betraying no emotion. "Yes, Illuminator. The search teams have found no trace of her or the outsider since they escaped Sector 17. It seems they discovered Vane's safe house and accessed her files." Arlo's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Then they know about the ceremony, about the Hut Pact." "It appears so. We've increased security accordingly and accelerated the timeline as you commanded." Arlo paced the circumference of the central platform, his mind working through the implications and possible countermeasures. "Isabella is nothing if not predictable in her sense of duty. If she knows what we're planning, she'll attempt to stop it, which means she'll come here, to the arena." "We've secured all known entrances," Maris assured him. "All known entrances," Arlo repeated with a slight smile. "But my sister has always had a talent for finding paths others have forgotten. That's why we need to draw her out on our terms." He turned to face the Hut Pact apparatus, its crystals now pulsing in a rhythm that matched his heartbeat, the connection between activator and instrument growing stronger with each passing minute. "Proceed with the preliminary blood extraction from our guests," he instructed. "Make it public. Ensure that the news spreads through Viridian's information networks. My sister won't be able to ignore the suffering of innocent nobles, especially when she believes she could prevent it by surrendering herself." Maris nodded and moved to relay the orders, but Arlo called her back with a subtle gesture. "And Maris, prepare Dr. Reese for the possibility that we may need to work with a less than willing Arden contribution. The blood pact complicates matters, but it can be managed with the right techniques." "As you command, Illuminator." Maris departed, leaving Arlo alone with the pulsing heart of his ambitions. He approached the ancient device, running his fingers along its contours with reverent familiarity. Years of research, countless resources expended, alliances formed and broken, all leading to this moment of transformation. The Hutt Pact would transfer control of Viridian's most fundamental systems directly to him, bypassing the Brotherhood's distributed authority structure and creating a direct line of command that no political maneuvering could challenge. "A necessary evolution," he murmured to himself, echoing the philosophy he had cultivated within the light, less dark. "The old ways must yield to the new. Blood must renew itself through sacrifice." In the shadow of his grand vision, a small doubt flickered, an echo of the bond he had once shared with his sister, before ambition and ideology had driven them onto separate paths. For a moment, he allowed himself to remember Isabella as she had been in their youth, fierce, principled, uncompromising in her loyalty to those she considered family. The memory passed quickly, replaced by the cold certainty that had become his companion in the years since their father's death. Sentiment was a luxury he could no longer afford, not when the future of Viridian hung in the balance. "Begin the broadcast," he commanded the technicians stationed around the perimeter. "Let Viridian witness the dawn of a new era." In a maintenance tunnel 3 levels above the secret chamber, Isabella and Logan finalized their plan. They had accessed the arena's security network through an auxiliary terminal, using codes that Isabella's father had entrusted to her for emergencies. "Arlo's making his move," Logan reported, studying the data flowing across the screen. "He's initiated a citywide broadcast from the arena. Public extraction of blood from the noble hostages is about to begin." Isabella's expression hardened. "He's trying to flush us out, force me to surrender myself in exchange for their safety." "A predictable tactic," Logan agreed. "Which is why we're not going to respond as he expects." The plan they had formulated was risky, relying on precise timing and the unique properties of the blood pact that bound them together. While modern science in Viridian had advanced beyond many of the superstitions of the past, certain ancient technologies, like the Hutt Pact and the Blood Pact, operated on principles that defied conventional understanding. "The Blood Pact creates a bioenergetic connection between us," Isabella had explained earlier. "According to the old texts, bonded individuals can, under certain circumstances, share more than just a metaphysical link. With the right catalyst, physical attributes can be temporarily transferred." "Including blood identity?" Logan had asked, immediately grasping the implications. "Theoretically, yes. It's never been documented in modern times. But the principle is sound. My blood would register as yours, and vice versa, confusing any system designed to identify bloodlines." This theoretical possibility formed the cornerstone of their counterattack. If they could temporarily confuse the Hutt Pact apparatus by manipulating the Blood Pact's properties, they might create enough disruption to stop the ceremony and free the hostages. Now, as they prepared to put this theory into practice, Isabella withdrew a small object from a hidden pocket in her clothing, a crystal vial similar to the one she had traded for information, but containing a luminescent crimson liquid rather than blue. "Blood catalyst," she explained, noting Logan's questioning look. Another of my father's precautions. It enhances blood-based technologies, making latent properties manifest. Your father seems to have anticipated a great many contingencies, Logan observed. Isabella's expression turned solemn. He knew Viridian better than anyone, its strengths and its vulnerabilities. Before he died, he warned me that forces within the city were working to undermine the balance of power. I didn't realize at the time that he was speaking of my brother. She uncapped the vial, the liquid within seeming to respond to her proximity by glowing more intensely. This will temporarily strengthen our blood pact to its maximum potential. The effects are unpredictable, but according to the old sciences, it should create enough confusion in the Hut Pact apparatus to disrupt the ceremony. And the risks? Logan asked, ever the tactician. Significant, she admitted. The catalyst could permanently alter our bond, or it might trigger a backlash from the Hut Pact that could harm us both. But without it, we have no way to counter a fully activated blood ritual. Logan considered this, then nodded decisively. We've already staked our lives on each other once. Might as well make it twice. Isabella raised the vial in a small toast. To unexpected alliances. And to blood that binds rather than divides, Logan added softly. She drank half the contents, then passed the vial to Logan, who consumed the remainder without hesitation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a wave of heat surged through them both, the blood pact between them flaring into tangible awareness, like a second pulse beneath their skin. Isabella gasped, steadying herself against the wall as new sensations flooded her consciousness. She could feel Logan's presence not just physically, but on a level that transcended normal perception. His thoughts, emotions, and physical state partially accessible to her as if they were extensions of her own being. Logan experienced the same phenomenon, his usual stoic expression giving way to momentary wonder. This is intense. The old texts didn't exaggerate, Isabella agreed, marveling at the connection even as she fought to maintain focus on their objective. Can you feel the resonance with the Hut Pact below? It's like a pull, trying to draw my blood, our blood, toward it. Logan nodded, already adapting to the new sensory input with the discipline that had served him through years of dangerous operations. We need to move now, while the catalyst is at full potency. The broadcast has begun. They made their way through the maintenance tunnels toward the arena proper, their movements synchronized with preternatural precision. The enhanced blood pact allowed them to communicate with minimal words, each anticipating the other's actions almost before they occurred. As they approached the final access point to the arena floor, Isabella paused, touching Logan's arm. Through their connection, she conveyed what words would have struggled to express: gratitude for his unflinching support, determination to see their plan through, and a complex emotion that had begun to take root between them, despite the brevity of their acquaintance. Logan returned the gesture, his response equally multifaceted: respect for her courage, admiration for her principles, and a protective instinct that went beyond the obligations of the blood pact. With a final, shared nod, they moved into position. The arena below had transformed into a macabre spectacle, the 6 noble hostages arranged in a circle around the central platform, each connected to the Hut Pact apparatus by tubes designed to channel their blood into the ancient device. Arlo stood at the center, his arms raised as he addressed not only those physically present, but the entire city through the broadcast system. Citizens of Viridian, his voice resonated through the vast space. For too long we have lived under the shadow of traditions that serve only the privileged few. The Brotherhood, the noble houses. They claim to protect us, yet they hoard resources, restrict access to the surface, and perpetuate a system of inequality that has persisted for generations. The crowd that had gathered, a carefully selected audience of light, less dark sympathizers, and those too intimidated to resist, responded with controlled enthusiasm. Forbidden Guard members stood at strategic points throughout the arena, their weapons ready to suppress any opposition. Tonight, we reclaim Viridian for all its citizens, Arlo continued, his charisma evident in every carefully modulated word. The Hutt Pact, an ancient technology created by our founders, will transfer control of the city's systems to a new authority, one committed to equality, to progress, to the illumination of all dark corners where privilege has festered. As he spoke, technicians activated the extraction mechanisms connected to the noble hostages. Thin streams of blood began to flow through the transparent tubes, drawing gasps and murmurs from the audience. On the broadcast screens positioned around the arena, close-up images showed the faces of the captives, some defiant, others fearful, all unwilling participants in Arlo's revolution. Only one component remains, Arlo announced, his gaze sweeping the arena as if searching for someone specific. The final bloodline, the Arden contribution. My sister, Isabella, whose devotion to the old ways has blinded her to the necessity of change. He paused dramatically, then continued with practiced sincerity. Isabella, if you are watching this broadcast, know that the blood of 6 noble houses is already flowing into the Hutt Pact. Surrender yourself peacefully, and I promise their lives will be spared. Resist, and their deaths will serve as the foundation of our new beginning. It was a masterful performance, positioning himself as reluctant, but resolute, forced to extreme measures by a sister who clung to outdated traditions. The implicit message to Viridian citizens was clear. The coming changes were necessary, even if they required sacrifice. This is our moment, Isabella whispered to Logan as they watched from their concealed position above the arena floor. The catalyst-enhanced blood pact hummed between them, reaching its peak potency. Ready? Logan nodded, his focus absolute. Lead the way. Isabella activated the final door mechanism, and together they stepped into the light. The appearance of 2 figures on the upper rim of the arena sent a ripple of surprise through the assembled crowd. For a moment, confusion reigned. The individuals didn't match the descriptions circulating throughout Viridian of the fugitive Isabella Arden and her mysterious protector. Then, recognition dawned in Arlo's eyes as he spotted the platinum-haired woman and her companion. Despite their altered appearances, the blood pact between them created a distinctive energy signature that anyone with blood sensitivity could perceive. Sister, he called, his voice carrying easily through the arena's acoustic design. I'm pleased you decided to join us, though your disguise is unnecessary. This is a family matter, after all. Isabella and Logan descended toward the arena floor via a maintenance ladder, deliberately taking a path that kept them at a distance from the nearest Forbidden Guard positions. As they reached the main level, Isabella stepped forward, her transformed appearance doing nothing to diminish her natural authority. This ceased to be a family matter when you took hostages. Arlo, she replied, her voice pitched to carry to both the physical audience and those watching the broadcast. Release them. Whatever grievances you have with the current system, these people are not responsible. Arlo spread his hands in a gesture of reasonable compromise. They represent the system, Isabella. Their bloodlines have perpetuated the inequalities that plague Viridian. But I am not without mercy. Join us willingly. Contribute your blood to the Hutt Pact as these others have done, and I promise they will be released once the transition is complete. And if I refuse? Then their deaths will be on your conscience, Arlo replied simply. The Hutt Pact will proceed either way. Their blood is already feeding the apparatus. Your contribution would simply ensure a smoother transition, with fewer casualties. Isabella took another step forward, closing the distance between herself and the central platform. Logan moved with her, their enhanced connection, allowing them to maintain perfect positioning relative to each other. You've convinced yourself that your actions serve a greater good, Isabella said, addressing not just her brother, but the audience witnessing their confrontation. That the violence you're inflicting is justified by the world you claim to be building. But look around you. Arlo, look at what you've become. You speak of illumination while standing in shadow, of freedom while taking hostages, of equality while seeking absolute power. Murmurs spread through sections of the crowd. Not the light, less dark faithful, but those who had been coerced or manipulated into supporting Arlo's vision. Isabella's words struck at the contradictions many had sensed, but been afraid to acknowledge. Arlo's expression hardened, the mask of reasonable leadership slipping, to reveal the cold ambition beneath. Enough rhetoric. Isabella, your choice is simple. Join us willingly, or watch these nobles die before you join them by force. The Hut Pact will be completed tonight, with or without your cooperation. He gestured to Dr. Reese, who stood near the apparatus, monitoring its functions. The preliminary phase is almost complete. In moments, the full extraction will begin. Isabella's gaze shifted to the captured nobles, noting their conditions with growing concern. Counselor Vex, despite his age, remained stoically upright in his restraints. Others showed signs of weakness as the preliminary blood extraction continued. "You know I can't allow this to proceed," she said quietly, returning her attention to her brother. "And how exactly do you plan to stop it?" Arlo challenged. "You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of options. Even with your bound protector, you cannot stand against the Forbidden Guard and the light, less dark faithful." Isabella exchanged a look with Logan, their enhanced connection conveying more than words could express. They had reached the critical moment in their plan. "You've overlooked something fundamental, brother," she replied, her voice taking on a resonant quality that seemed to vibrate through the very air of the arena. "The Blood Pact isn't just an ancient tradition. It's a technology as powerful as the Hut Pact, and far less understood." Before Arlo could respond, Isabella and Logan clasped hands, completing a circuit that caused the catalyst-enhanced bond between them to flare visibly, a nimbus of crimson energy that enveloped them both. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Hut Pact apparatus began to pulse erratically, its carefully calibrated rhythm disrupted by the conflicting blood signatures suddenly present in the arena. Dr. Reese rushed to the controls, her expression alarmed. "Something's interfering with the attunement phase. The blood identifiers are becoming confused. The apparatus can't distinguish between ardent signatures." Arlo's composure fractured as he witnessed his carefully orchestrated ceremony beginning to unravel. "What have you done?" he demanded, advancing toward Isabella with fury etched on his features. "Created uncertainty," she replied calmly, maintaining her connection with Logan as the disruption spread through the Hut Pact's systems. "The apparatus requires absolute clarity of bloodline identification. Our enhanced blood pact is creating a deliberate confusion, two ardent signatures that simultaneously are and aren't the same." As she spoke, the tubes connecting the noble hostages to the central apparatus began to disengage, the extraction process automatically halting as the system attempted to reconcile the conflicting inputs. Alarms sounded throughout the arena as the ancient technology entered a protective shutdown sequence. "Stop them!" Arlo commanded the Forbidden Guard, his voice sharp with desperation. "Separate them. The Blood Pact's interference will cease if they're physically apart." Guards moved to obey, but Logan was already in motion, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to intercept the first attackers with practiced efficiency. He fought not to kill, but to disable, creating a defensive perimeter around Isabella as she maintained their connection to the Blood Pact's disruptive effect. "Isabella!" Counselor Vex called from his restraints, which had begun to loosen as the apparatus shutdown continued. "The central crystal! It's the key component. Destroy it and the entire system will collapse." Arlo lunged toward the counselor, drawing a ceremonial dagger from within his robes. "Silence, old man! Your time is past. What happened next occurred with such speed that many witnesses would later offer conflicting accounts. Isabella, still connected to Logan through their enhanced bond, sensed his tactical assessment and moved in perfect coordination. As he engaged multiple guards, creating a momentary opening, she broke away and sprinted toward the central platform where the Hut Pact apparatus stood. Arlo, seeing her intention, changed direction to intercept her, the ceremonial dagger raised. "I won't let you destroy everything we've worked for," he shouted, his composure completely abandoned in the face of imminent failure. Logan, despite being engaged with 3 guards simultaneously, perceived the danger through their bond. With extraordinary effort, he broke free and launched himself toward Isabella, intercepting Arlo's attack in a clash of bodies that sent all 3 tumbling onto the central platform. The dagger slashed downward, catching Logan across the shoulder, a wound that, through the enhanced blood pact, Isabella felt as if it were her own. She gasped in shared pain, but maintained her focus, reaching for the central crystal of the Hut Pact apparatus, even as the brothers grappled beside her. "Don't do this, Isabella," Arlo pleaded, his voice suddenly desperate rather than commanding. "You don't understand what's at stake. The surface negotiations, they're a trap. The Brotherhood is selling Viridian's future for short-term gain." Isabella hesitated, her hand hovering above the pulsing crystal heart of the apparatus. "What are you talking about?" "The treaty terms," Arlo continued, sensing her uncertainty. "They include provisions for surface access to our water reclamation technology, the only advantage we still hold. Once they have it, they'll have no reason to maintain peaceful relations. We'll be at their mercy." Logan, still restraining Arlo despite his injury, met Isabella's gaze. Through their bond, she could sense his assessment, that her brother genuinely believed what he was saying, that fear for Viridian's future had twisted his ambition into something darker but rooted in legitimate concern. "If what you say is true, there are other ways to address it," Isabella replied, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "Ways that don't involve bloodshed and betrayal." "I tried!" Arlo's composure cracked completely, revealing the tortured reasoning behind his actions. "I brought evidence to the council, presented alternatives, even appealed to the Brotherhood directly. They wouldn't listen, just as they wouldn't listen to Father before he died." The implication hung in the air between them, a confirmation of Isabella's long-held suspicion that their father's death had not been the accident it was officially declared. "The Brotherhood silenced him," Arlo continued, his voice breaking, "just as they would have silenced me, and eventually you. The Hut Pact was the only way to bypass their authority completely, to ensure Viridian's survival, regardless of their corruption." Isabella absorbed this revelation, feeling its truth through the enhanced perception granted by the Blood Pact catalyst. Her brother's methods were wrong, catastrophically, unforgivably wrong, but his fears were not entirely unfounded. The moment of revelation was shattered as Dr. Reese, seeing the ceremony on the verge of collapse, activated an emergency protocol in the Hut Pact apparatus. The crystal at its heart began to pulse with increasing intensity, no longer responding to the controls. "What have you done?" Arlo demanded, his attention shifting from Isabella to the doctor. "Ensured the completion of our work," Reese replied with fanatical determination. "The emergency protocol will force the extraction process regardless of blood signature confusion. It will drain all Arden blood within range, both of yours, to complete the activation." The apparatus surged with renewed energy, tendrils of crimson power extending toward both Isabella and Arlo. Logan, sensing the imminent danger through their bond, made a decision in a fraction of a second. "Isabella!" he called, breaking his hold on Arlo to reach for her. "The Blood Pact! We can use it to redirect the flow!" Understanding flashed between them. Their enhanced connection could potentially channel the apparatus's extraction attempt away from Isabella and into Logan. whose blood now carried enough of her signature to temporarily satisfy the Hut Pact, while disrupting its intended function. Without hesitation, Isabella clasped Logan's outstretched hand, completing the circuit just as the extraction tendrils reached them. The effect was immediate and devastating. The apparatus seized on Logan's blood, drawing it through the enhanced connection with such force that he collapsed to his knees, his face contorted in agony. "Logan!" Isabella cried, feeling his pain through their bond, yet unable to break the connection without exposing herself to the full force of the extraction. Arlo, witnessing this unexpected development, made a choice that surprised even himself. Rather than using the distraction to complete his plans, he lunged toward Dr. Reese, wrestling her away from the controls. "Override the emergency protocol," he demanded. "It's draining too much. It will kill them both." "That's the price of illumination," Reese replied, her expression serene despite the chaos. "Blood must be sacrificed for the new dawn." The fanaticism in her voice seemed to shock Arlo, forcing him to confront the extremism his movement had cultivated. With sudden clarity, he saw not just his sister and her bound protector in danger, but the potential consequences of the power he had sought to unleash. Making a decision that would forever alter his path, Arlo released Reese and turned instead to the Hut Pact apparatus. With a cry that contained equal parts rage and determination, he drove the ceremonial dagger not into his opponents, but into the heart of the crystal controlling the ancient device. The effect was catastrophic and immediate. The crystal shattered with an explosive release of energy, the carefully calibrated systems of the Hut Pact collapsing in a cascade of failure. The extraction tendrils disintegrated, releasing Logan from their deadly grip. But the backlash of energy surged through the platform in waves of destructive force. Isabella, still connected to Logan through their bond, dragged him away from the failing apparatus, their enhanced coordination allowing them to move with preternatural speed, despite his weakened condition. Arlo was not so fortunate, standing at the epicenter of the collapse. He absorbed the full brunt of the released energy. The arena erupted into panic as the ancient technology's failure sent shockwaves through the structure. The Forbidden Guard, their leadership suddenly uncertain, without clear commands from Arlo, focused on evacuation rather than pursuit. The noble hostages, fully released from their restraints as the apparatus shut down, were helped to safety by audience members who had never truly embraced the light, less dark's extremism. Isabella and Logan reached a relatively sheltered position at the arena's edge, where she could assess his condition. The blood loss from the extraction, combined with the wound from Arlo's dagger, had left him dangerously weakened. "Stay with me," she urged, the enhanced blood pact allowing her to share some of her strength with him. "We're getting out of here." "Your brother," Logan managed, his voice barely audible above the chaos surrounding them. "Is he—" Isabella looked back toward the central platform, where Arlo lay motionless amid the wreckage of his ambitions. Despite everything he had done, a twist of grief constricted her heart. "I don't know," she admitted. "But we can't help him now. We need to get you to safety." As they made their way toward one of the emergency exits, Isabella became aware of a presence behind them. Turning, she found Maris standing a few paces away, her weapon drawn but not raised. "The light will prevail," the captain said, though her voice lacked the conviction it had held earlier. "Even without the Hut Pact, the movement continues." Isabella straightened, supporting Logan's weight against her side. "The light you seek isn't found through bloodshed. Maris, my brother learned that too late. Don't make the same mistake." For a moment, it seemed Maris might pursue them. Then, with a slight nod that acknowledged something changing within her own understanding, she turned away to help with the evacuation efforts. They escaped through the emergency tunnel as the arena continued to empty. The grand ceremony that was meant to transform Viridian having accomplished exactly that, but not in the way Arlo had intended. The revelation of the Brotherhood's secret negotiations, the public hostage-taking of noble representatives, the visible clash between the Arden siblings, all would force a reckoning within Viridian's power structure that no amount of official denial could prevent. As they emerged into the relative safety of the old district, Isabella allowed herself a moment of reflection. The blood pact between them, though no longer enhanced by the catalyst, had evolved into something deeper and more permanent through the trials they had endured together. What had begun as an ancient tradition, an accidental binding, had become a connection neither would choose to break. "What happens now?" Logan asked as they paused to rest, his strength gradually returning. Isabella gazed out over the tiered landscape of Viridian, the city she had fought to protect, even as she challenged its flawed systems. "Reconstruction," she replied. "Not just of the arena, but of Viridian itself. The Brotherhood can't ignore what happened tonight. Too many witnessed it, both in person and through the broadcast." "And your brother?" The question carried weight beyond the immediate concern for Arlo's fate. It asked about justice and mercy, about the balance between family loyalty and wider responsibility. "If he survived," Isabella said after a moment's consideration, "he'll face consequences for his actions, but his revelations about the surface negotiations can't be dismissed. They must be investigated, verified, and addressed." Logan nodded, understanding the complexity of the path ahead. "And us? The blood pact remains." Isabella turned to face him fully, studying the man who had begun as a stranger and become something for which Viridian's rigid social categories had no adequate definition. Not quite protector, not merely ally, something both simpler and more profound. "The old texts speak of blood pacts that lasted lifetimes," she said softly, "of bonded pairs who traveled between the underground cities, serving as neutral mediators because their connection transcended local loyalties." "Diplomatic couriers," Logan suggested, a smile touching his lips despite his exhaustion. "Moving between worlds." "Seeking the origins of the blood pact," Isabella continued, the idea taking shape between them. "Understanding its purpose beyond the traditions that have obscured it, the prospect offered a way forward that neither had anticipated, a purpose that would take them beyond Viridian's confines while still serving its interests, and those of all the underground cities struggling with similar challenges." "A journey, then," Logan agreed, his hand finding hers in a gesture that had become natural despite their brief acquaintance. "To understand what binds us, and what might bind the fractured societies of our world." As dawn broke in the artificial sky above Viridian, simulating the surface world most citizens would never see, Isabella and Logan began planning their departure. The blood pact that had begun with violence and necessity would continue as a choice, a bond freely embraced, carrying them toward horizons neither could fully envision, but both were determined to explore. Behind them, Viridian faced its own uncertain dawn, the revelations of the failed ceremony forcing confrontations with truths long buried beneath tradition and hierarchy. The Brotherhood's authority had been challenged, the noble family's complacency shaken, the grievances of the lower districts exposed for all to acknowledge. Change would come, as it always did, not through the dramatic revolution Arlo had envisioned, but through the slower, more lasting process of collective awakening. In saving Viridian from her brother's extreme methods, Isabella had paradoxically ensured that his deeper concerns would finally receive the attention they deserved. And somewhere in the aftermath, among the rubble of the arena and the shattered remnants of the Hut Pact apparatus, the ancient technologies that had shaped Viridian's history continued their subtle influence. Blood calling to blood, past to future, in patterns too complex for any single vision to encompass. The blood pact that bound Isabella and Logan would carry them far from these underground halls, yet eternally connect them to the city, where their unlikely alliance began, a living thread in the continuing story of a world struggling to balance tradition with transformation, power with justice, the shadows of the past with the illumination of possible futures.